Dear Luke Evangelista and Barry Trotz, can you get a deal done already?
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off our week with a hearty shout out to our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I am Emma Lingan, and I'm an NHL reporter and host with the Hockey News.
Well, the contract the entire NHL has been watching finally got done as the Marco Rossi saga wraps up. But a little closer to home, there is still one young player's contract that remains in limbo. On today's show, we are going to take a closer look at what the market may be saying when it comes to Luke Evangelista's deal. We're going to discuss what Nashville needs to see from him, regardless of his paycheck, and what he needs to succeed. Before we dive into all of that, we do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. All right, Emma, we thought it was never going to happen. I mean, it was really starting to be a days of our lives, like the sands through the hourglass. So goes the Marco Rossi contract negotiation. Finally got done. And I mean, like in the nick of time. Marco Rossi signed a 3-year, $15 million contract with the Minnesota Wild. This has been a saga. I mean, we have gone from offer sheet rumors to like trades and what will and won't work. And then like longer term, no, shorter term, bigger AAV. And then, it got to a point where we were like, is Rossi going to sit out a training camp because this is not gotten done? This has been a lot of contract drama for a young player, Emma.
It has. When we did our crossover episode with Seth from Locked On Wild, that was one of the first things I wanted to ask him about. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's happening here? And he, to his credit, he said, Marco Rossi is not the kind of guy who's going to sit out of training camp for something like this. It's going to get done.
Yes.
It's going to get done before training camp. But I think even this was earlier than I think a lot of people were expecting. But it was, they got it done. I personally think the Wild win this deal. I mean, knowing that Rossi was asking for somewhere in the neighborhood of like what Matt Boldy was getting, so like 7 or 8 million. The fact that they got him for 3 years at 5 million, especially with the cap going up, I mean, that is a good bit of business for Bill Guerin and the Wild. I think that they, great for the team. And, it gives 3 more years of security, 5 million. Again, a lot of that hinged on his playoff usage. And I guess, Rossi was not used in as, I don't know, a primary role in the playoffs
Right.
as he was in the regular season. But I think a lot of that has to do with his size. Of course, he is smaller, not a super physical player. And when it gets to playoff hockey, you got to go for physicality where you can. So, I think that was probably the sticking point for the team. But knowing that team needs to essentially hand a blank check to Kirill Kaprizov this upcoming season or off season, they needed to get this done as cheaply as possible, and they did. So it was definitely a saga, but again, one that despite all of the storylines and the speculation, I think it was one that we always kind of knew that he was going to return to Minnesota because, a lot of that is just the news cycle, the nature of the news cycle in the off season. It's can be a little slow, a little dry at times.
Yeah.
So we gotta, that's where a lot of those storylines come from. But I think that it was kind of known he was going to end up back in Minnesota, and he did. And even now, I mean, by the time this contract is up, he'll be 26, and
Great time for him.
yeah, that'll be great for him. So I think like Wild win in the immediate term. I think Rossi wins in the long term. So, concessions made on both sides.
Yeah. And it was great, like you said, to see this deal get done because there is something about having money be a part of a conversation when training camp is getting ready to kick off. And that is a situation that Nashville is hoping to avoid. Of course, we are talking about Luke Evangelista. Ladies and gentlemen, as of the time of this recording, Luke Evangelista has not signed a contract with the Nashville Predators. And it's not something that I expected would be dragging on like this. And quite honestly, this is not something that I think Luke Evangelista felt like was going to drag on like this. At least that was the indication he gave us at Locker Room Cleanup. This is what Vange had to say at the end of the season when it came to talking about contract negotiations.
Honestly, haven't really thought about it much. I think obviously something needs to be addressed. I think my agent and Trotz have a good relationship, and it's been mentioned like something's got to get done. But kind of just wanted to focus on my play down the stretch here at the end of the season. Kind of there's no rush. We'll deal with that this offseason. Confident something will get done.
This is one of those situations where I think the Marco Rossi saga maybe bleeds over a little bit for Nashville Predators fans, because with Marco Rossi, it was like anytime somebody involved in that storyline farted, everybody talked about it in the news cycle. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there was not a whisper of a thought of an idea that did not get chewed on. And yet there really has been silence when it comes to news getting out about Luke Evangelista. And I think that may have fans feeling a little bit more nervous, like, oh my gosh, they're not talking. It's not happening, because you've got this Marco Rossi saga and then you've got Luke Evangelista where it's just crickets. And I will say this, I don't think the lack of information coming from the team, from Trotz, from Luke Evangelista's camp, I would not say that that is an indication that they are at this absolutely unbreakable impasse and we have a huge problem on our hands, Emma.
No, and we've said that before. Just because we're not hearing about it doesn't mean that things aren't happening. Like, that we love to quote the musical Hamilton on our show, but we're not in the room where it happens, right? So like we don't know exactly what is being said and what's going on, but like just because we as the general public have not been updated on every single detail, every single development, doesn't mean that it's not happening. And again, I think quite honestly, it's more of an indication that something is getting done. It's just a matter of when. And it's like, it's not an if, it's a when. I think we'd be hearing more. There would be more whispers, more like, oh, if there was a legitimate possibility that he was leaving, that they were going to trade him or whatever it was. I just really, a lot of times these things strictly come down to, hey, let's wait until we're all in the same city and we can all be in a room together. Like
Absolutely.
A lot of times it really is just as simple as that. So it's like, maybe we have, they have the framework of an agreement figured out. But it's like, let's just wait to dot the I's and cross the T's until we all get in a room together. It's much easier to do that than on the phone or over Zoom, So like, it could very easily be something like that. But that being said, I do understand how this whole, it's like, okay, well, Rossi signed anytime now. Like, come on now. Like, what are we waiting for? So I think it's, a lot of it just kind of it gets built up to be more than it is, just because of the lack of news and updates on it.
Yeah. Coming up, we're going to talk about the saga of Luke Evangelista, or the lack thereof. We're going to talk about why we haven't heard anything about offer sheets. We're also going to talk about what a deal might look like for Vange. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it is 401ks, property, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why you need Monarch Money. It is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you have put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use our code LOCKEDON NHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Before we dive in and talk some more about Luke Evangelista and money, we do have an important request for our listeners. Locked On wants to hear from you. We have put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and to make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. So go to lockedonpodcasts.com/survey to get started. Everybody who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcasts.com/survey. You can also find the link in our show notes. We appreciate you helping us out. All right, Emma, talking about, the Marco Rossi saga has wrapped up neatly. Now we're kind of in limbo here in Nashville, waiting for the Luke Evangelista saga to wrap up. But again, it's been much more quiet. And I think part of that is, even though there are some similarities between Rossi and Evangelista, they're both 23 years old. They've both played a very similar number of NHL games. You are looking at players who have had two very different opportunities in their tenure in the NHL as well. So you kind of have to say that in some ways you are comparing two players with very different opportunities. And that's something that I think is going to weigh in as we talk about a potential contract with Luke Evangelista. But first, let's talk about what didn't happen, what isn't happening, what we are not hearing about Luke Evangelista. And friends, that is an offer sheet. Why has nobody offer sheeted? I feel like the other version of the past tense of that is going to be a word that's going to get bleeped out. So we're just going to say, why hasn't anybody put in an offer sheet?
Yes. No, offer sheeted.
Offer sheeted.
Yes, not offer
close,
anything else. It was, but
I almost went there.
Yeah, no, but you caught yourself in perfect time.
Ooh.
No, why has it not happened? Well, number one, because I think certain segment of the Predators fan base has maybe an inflated sense of importance around Luke Evangelista. And I mean absolutely no shade to Luke Evangelista when I say that. I just think that he is not as highly valued around the rest of the league for that reason. I mean, you talked just a moment ago about opportunities, and you look at other players, other RFAs, notable RFAs who remain unsigned, guys like Mason McTavish in Anaheim, Luke Hughes in New Jersey. I mean, those are huge names that still don't have contracts either. Now, they probably, much like Rossi, they've had bigger opportunities with their respective organizations, and their general managers have probably, in a sense, peed in a circle around them and said, no. I just don't think that anyone offer sheets. It happened last year with Edmonton and St. Louis that they were able to get, St. Louis was able to get Holloway and Broberg from Edmonton, like double offer sheet, nailed it. It worked out swimmingly. They made it to the playoffs. They had that great surge in the second half of the year. And, it worked out great. But offer sheets don't happen that often. And the reason they don't happen that often is because they don't work out that well that often. And so you have to be like really sure about something. And I can't see anyone being really sure about Luke Evangelista that you want to risk giving up assets to get him, because it has something to do. I don't have the exact guidelines in front of me, but if the offer sheet is not matched, then the team that puts in the offer sheet gets the player, but then they still have to give the team something
Right.
in return. And
Mhm.
that comes in the form of draft picks. And the fact of the matter is, with Gavin McKenna and his draft class coming up, nobody, and I mean nobody, wants to even flirt with the idea of giving up a first round pick next year. Even if it's like a team that is a perennial contender, a team that's supposed to go deep into the playoffs next year, probably won't be picking, at the top of the order anyway. Doesn't matter. No
Right.
one wants to give up a first round pick when there's a Gavin McKenna at stake at the end of the tunnel. So I
Yeah.
think that that's a big part of it too. And so part of it is just the nature of offer sheets and like why they don't happen that often, because it's not as simple as please can I have, and it's more, there's more nuance to it, but also it's this particular year and those
Yes.
first round picks are especially valuable.
Yeah. And I also think this is a practice that you across the board, I don't think GMs want this to become a way that you supplement your team, because it sounds great in theory. And an offer sheet sounds like a really great, almost like a board game way of filling a spot on your roster. But I don't think any GM wants this to become how you do that, because if you are on the giving end, you are risking a lot. Like you said, you are risking draft picks on somebody that a team is maybe on the fence about. And we're looking, talking about a Luke Evangelista in this situation. We have seen what he is capable of, but we haven't seen all he is capable of. So another team is not going to go, Luke Evangelista is a sure thing, when Nashville is still the team who has seen him play for 100 and I think 72 games, and Nashville is still going, is he a sure thing? So GMs aren't going to risk something when the payoff is still a little up in the air as well, and they just don't want this to become a practice anyway. And I can't blame them, because then it's a whole nother can of worms. Like, stick to trading and drafts and free agency. Offer sheets should, I don't think GMs want this to become a thing.
No, because it also creates like strained relations between
Mhm.
certain organizations too. Like there's a lot at stake there. And again, you're not going to do it unless someone is a sure thing.
Yes.
Or if you think someone's a sure thing. Like, for example, when the Carolina Hurricanes thought Jesperi Kotkaniemi was a sure thing and offer sheeted Montreal for him. Hasn't quite worked out that way. But in that same scenario though, I mean, that was sort of their comeback to when Montreal offer sheeted Sebastian Aho the year before.
Yes.
They matched it and they said, no, 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 you're not taking our guy. And so you do see it creates this kind of strained relations, as petty as it might be. I'm here for it personally, but it's not an ideal way to do business.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be something that becomes a regular way of doing things. And friends, even though we're hearing nothing about Luke Evangelista, I really don't think we're going to hear anything about an offer sheet. Coming up, we will talk about what we might be hearing when it comes to a deal for Luke Evangelista. What could the contract negotiations be like? What is feeding into Luke's side and what is feeding into Barry Trotz's side? Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. It is a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you are calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or you are ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, friends, this is your moment. If you think the Eagles can repeat, or maybe you are like me and you're just really hoping it's Josh Allen and the Bills year, or you want to parlay a division winner dark horse like the Titans, you can call your shot on FanDuel Futures Day. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Emma, we were talking before about there are some similarities with Marco Rossi, but then there are some differences. And some of the factors that are going to be going into conversations between Luke Evangelista's agent and Barry Trotz are worth mentioning. We talked about opportunity. Again, they're the same age, played very similar number of NHL games, but opportunity has been very different for players like a Marco Rossi versus a player like a Luke Evangelista. And this is something that I think will be an interesting part of these talks, because Luke Evangelista, like every single person, minus Philip Forsberg, who wore a Predators jersey last year, had some ups and downs. And so I wonder how these things are playing into negotiations, because when you are a young player and you're wanting to negotiate a contract, in some ways, and Luke would never, Luke, let me be clear, Luke Evangelista would never say this, but I'm going to say it. It plays in his favor that basically everybody sucked on the team.
Yeah, I mean, it does, because you can't really point to him and say like, well, he was the problem, because I
Right.
mean, who wasn't the problem on
Who
that
among
team?
us? Who among us, friends, was not a
Yeah.
problem?
Yes, but at the same time, it also doesn't help. It doesn't work in his favor that he wasn't given a lot of opportunity, because I think, again, once it became clear that this was not going to be a playoff team, he should have started getting those opportunities immediately. And he
Yes.
didn't. And I think
Nope.
part of that was, now he did have some injury struggles early in the year. So he missed some time, and that, he was kind of, it was not linear progress for him coming back. I'll just say that. But I think that, we started to see him toward the end of the year getting those like top 6 minutes with more consistency, and he looked good doing it. And you're like, okay. Now that makes me a little nervous though, because we saw the same thing the previous year. He looked good down the stretch in the regular season. He was one of the few guys that actually looked good in the playoffs against Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like I said, it was not linear. He came back. Now, it's not all, in his control. He got injured, can't control that. But I think that it's gonna, a lot of it comes down to, Barry Trotz has already publicly admitted to Luke Evangelista being an important part of this retool. He has said that. And this is, a piece for us for the now and for the future. So he's painted himself into a corner a bit with that one. So it's, Luke's agent is in there like, listen, man, you said it. We got it on tape. And
You want me to play it back for you?
right. But then
Yeah.
Barry Trotz is probably coming back saying like, well, but I mean, he's not a sure thing yet. And it's like, okay, but how are you going to know that he is or isn't if you don't give him the opportunity? And that comes back to everything that we've said about Andrew Brunette leading up to this point, and how he needs to, it's on him now to give these players opportunities. So it's just one of those things that is very frustrating, and I see both sides of it, but we really won't have an answer until, training camp and the
Right.
season starts.
Yeah. Luke talked about that at the end of the season. You mentioned Emma. He really kind of found his game, hit his groove at the end of the season. This is what Luke had to say about the opportunity he had.
Just kind of got a really good opportunity, and that's, as a player, that's all you can ask for. I got an opportunity to play some, top 6 minutes with great linies. I was playing with, Factor, and whether it was Phil or Bunce, it felt like you said, kind of, that's the version of myself that, I think I expect, and I think the staff expects. That was more like how I like to play and produce, and got a great opportunity, and kind of did something that I can build some momentum off of and go into the summer with a little bit of confidence. So it's a good end like that.
I do think how he finished the season is going to work in his favor, because with the right opportunity, with top 6 minutes, with players like Factor, with Phil, with Michael Bunting, you saw what Luke is capable of doing. And so I think that Nashville wants to get this done because, like you said, he is a part of the now and not yet. He is somebody who, when given the opportunity, rose to that level. Now they're going to need him to take more steps forward. And of course, Evangelista knows that. But this is a player that Nashville needs to sign. And this is a player that I think Nashville is probably going to be willing to invest a little bit more in than just your typical player, because of what he did at the end of the season last year and because of the opportunities he was given. Emma, are we going to see this get done before training camp? And if not, what is that going to be like?
I think we're going to see it get done. I think if we've learned anything from Barry Trotz and how he handles things like this, like, he does not want to go into training camp or into the season with any sort of unfinished business, any sort of anything hanging over his head. I mean, just ask Yaroslav, the player formerly known as Yaroslav Askarov. Just ask him about that. So, and I'm not at all trying to suggest that this has reached those levels of tension or disagreement. I don't even think it's even in that neighborhood. But the point being that, like, Barry Trotz does not want anything like this, like, hanging over the team. Right. Heading into training camp. Now, it very well might be the day before training camp. Like, I don't know. I'm just saying it could be one of those things like, hey, Luke's agent is in town that day. Mm-hmm. It could be that. But I feel very confident in saying that it's not going to be, it's going to be done before training camp starts.
Yeah. One thing that this team doesn't need is any sort of distraction. We've talked about this. This team has a lot of work to do to turn the page from just an abysmal season last year. The last thing this team needs is any sort of off-ice distraction when it comes to training camp. Training camp is going to be so critical for this team. And honestly, training camp is going to be so critical for Luke Evangelista individually. And so I agree with you. Barry Trotz is going to want to get this done. This team is going to need to have this done. Luke Evangelista needs to have this done so that it's not even a whisper of a thought in the back of that mind covered by all the pretty hair. Like, you have to get this done before training camp. The last thing this team needs is any off-ice distraction when training camp rolls around in 2 weeks. Emma, ballpark for me, term, if you were Luke, what would you be looking for term?
3 years.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And I think that would work well for both parties. That gives him an opportunity to grow into something that is also not going to be an untradeable contract. Heaven freaking forbid if we go the route of Tommy Novak, which can we just not? Lord. Can we just not? Like,
Barry Trotz might be a little gun shy if Luke's team is saying, how about 3 times 3.5? What do you think? You seem to like giving that contract out, Barry.
Yeah, Barry's going to get a little twitchy.
Yeah.
That's right. No, he'll be like, how about 3.49? 3.499 would be much better. Yeah.
That would be
It's
so much better for me.
so much better for me. It's going to be very interesting to see what gets done and when it gets done when it comes to Luke Evangelista. Like we said, this is something the Predators, Trotz, and Vange are going to want to have wrapped up before training camp kicks off. You know, the moment that we hear anything when it comes to Evangelista's contract, we will have it covered here at Locked On Predators. Let us know what you think. Where do you think Luke is going to land when it comes to a contract? What is a fair deal? What do you think is the best term for this particular player? Let us know in the comments. Also, you can reach us on social media at LO_Predators as well. Emma, before we log off on this Monday, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. Friends, that is going to do it for this Monday episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back later this week to talk more Nashville Predators hockey. We'll see you then.